The day I realized my husband was lying to me started like any other ordinary day. Nothing unusual. Nothing dramatic. Just another quiet morning in the life I thought I understood. My name is Julia, and until that day, I truly believed I had a good marriage. My husband, Daniel, and I had been together for 7 years. Married for 4. We met in a very simple way. Through mutual friends at a dinner party. Daniel wasn't the loudest person in the room. He wasn't the kind of man who tried to impress everyone with big stories or jokes. Instead, he was calm, quiet, the kind of person who listened more than he spoke. That was what I liked about him. When we talked that first night, the conversation felt easy, natural. We spoke about work, travel, and the places we both dreamed of visiting someday. By the end of the evening, I remember thinking something very clearly. I felt safe around him. That feeling grew stronger over the next few months. Daniel was consistent, reliable. He always showed up when he said he would. He remembered small details about my life. My favorite coffee, the books I loved, the music I played when I worked late at night. Eventually, we moved in together. 2 years later, he proposed. Our life together wasn't perfect, but it was peaceful. We had routines, simple ones. Dinner together most evenings. Weekend walks in the park. Movie nights on the couch. Nothing dramatic ever really happened. And maybe that's why I never expected what came next. The first strange thing happened on a Thursday night. Daniel came home later than usual. He worked as a financial analyst and sometimes he stayed late at the office. That wasn't unusual. But when he walked through the door that night, something felt different. Not obvious. Just subtle. He looked tired. More tired than usual. Long day? I asked. He nodded and placed his keys on the table. Yeah. Busy. Then he walked straight to the bathroom. Normally, Daniel would sit with me for a few minutes when he got home. We'd talk. Catch up. But that night he avoided eye contact. At the time, I didn't think much about it. Everyone has bad days. The next few weeks passed normally. Or, at least, they appeared normal. But slowly, little things started to change. Daniel began working late more often. Some nights, he came home after 10 p.m. Sometimes, even later. When I asked about it, he always had a simple explanation. Deadlines. Meetings. New project. His answers were calm and believable. Still, something inside me felt slightly uneasy. One night, I was sitting on the couch reading when Daniel's phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. He was in the shower. I glanced at the screen without thinking. A message had appeared. From a number I didn't recognize. The preview only showed a few words. Are you coming tonight? My heart skipped slightly. Maybe it was work. Maybe it was a colleague. Still, something about the message felt strange. When Daniel came out of the shower, he checked his phone immediately. Almost too quickly. Then he looked at me. Everything okay? He asked. I nodded. Yeah. He locked the phone and placed it face down on the table. That small movement stayed in my mind longer than it should have. Face down. Daniel had never done that before. After that night, I started noticing things I hadn't noticed before. Small things. Like how he always kept his phone with him now, even when he walked into another room. Or how he suddenly began putting his phone on silent mode. At first, I told myself I was imagining it, that I was being paranoid. But the feeling didn't go away. Instead, it slowly grew stronger. Then one evening something happened that changed everything. Daniel told me he had an overnight business trip. Just one night, he said while packing a small bag. I'll be back tomorrow afternoon. That wasn't unusual either. His job sometimes required short trips. Still, the uneasy feeling returned. Which city? I asked. Boston. He replied without hesitation. I nodded. Everything sounded normal. The next morning I woke up early and went to work. The day passed quickly. Meetings, emails, coffee breaks. Around lunchtime, I checked social media during a short break. And that's when I saw something that made my stomach tighten. One of Daniel's coworkers had posted a photo online. The caption read, "Team Lunch." I looked closer at the picture. Several people from Daniel's office were sitting at a restaurant table, laughing, eating. And right there in the middle of the photo was Daniel, in our city, not Boston. My chest suddenly felt tight. Maybe the photo was old. Maybe it had been taken earlier in the week. But something about the timestamp made my heart sink. The photo had been posted only 20 minutes earlier, which meant one thing. Daniel hadn't left the city at all. And that was the moment I realized something I had never considered before. My husband wasn't working late. My husband wasn't traveling. My husband was lying to me. For several minutes, I just stared at the photo on my phone. Daniel was sitting there at the restaurant table, smiling and talking with his coworkers. Completely relaxed. Completely normal. And definitely not in Boston. My mind tried to come up with explanations. Maybe the photo was taken earlier. Maybe the coworker posted it late. Maybe. But deep down I already knew the truth. Daniel had lied. The question was, why? I locked my phone and sat there in silence for a moment. My heart was beating faster than usual. Part of me wanted to call him immediately, to ask what was going on. But another part of me stopped. If I called him right now, he would simply repeat the same story. He would say he was in Boston. And if he was already lying, he wouldn't suddenly start telling the truth. So instead, I decided to wait. The rest of the afternoon passed slowly. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart jumped slightly. Around 5 p.m., Daniel finally texted me. "Just arrived at the hotel." I stared at the message. "Just arrived. In Boston." I typed back slowly. "How is the flight?" A few seconds later he replied, "Long." I felt something twist in my stomach. Flight. He was continuing the lie. For the first time since we met, I realized something unsettling. My husband was very good at lying. That evening I left work and drove home. The apartment felt strangely quiet. Daniel's side of the closet was slightly empty because of the bag he had packed. His coffee mug still sat in the sink. Everything looked normal, but it didn't feel normal anymore. I tried to distract myself with a movie, but my thoughts kept returning to the same question. Where was he really? And who was he with? At around 9 p.m., I checked social media again. The photo from earlier was still there. The same restaurant, the same coworkers, and Daniel sitting comfortably in the middle of them. Still very much in our city. I zoomed into the background of the photo, trying to notice anything unusual. Then something caught my attention. At the edge of the frame, barely visible behind Daniel, was a reflection in a window. A reflection of another table. And at that table, someone was sitting across from him. A woman. The image wasn't perfectly clear, but I could see enough to recognize one detail. Daniel wasn't sitting with his coworkers anymore. He had moved to another table, across from that woman. My hands felt cold. I stared at the screen, trying to understand what I was seeing. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe she was just another coworker. But something about the way they were sitting together felt different. Closer. More private. Like they had moved away from the rest of the group on purpose. My chest tightened. For a moment I considered calling him, demanding an explanation. But again I stopped myself. Instead, I did something I had never done before. I checked Daniel's location. Months earlier, we had enabled location sharing on our phones for safety reasons. We almost never used it, but the feature was still active. My fingers trembled slightly as I opened the map. For a moment the screen loaded slowly. Then the location appeared. And the moment I saw it, my stomach dropped. Daniel's phone wasn't in Boston. It wasn't even at the restaurant anymore. It was at a hotel. A hotel only 15 minutes away from our apartment. My heart started pounding. For several seconds, I couldn't move. 1,000 thoughts rushed through my mind. Maybe he was meeting a client. Maybe it was a work meeting. Maybe. But the more I tried to justify it, the less believable it felt. Finally, I stood up. I grabbed my keys and my coat Before I could change my mind, I walked out the door. The drive to the hotel felt surreal. The entire time my hands gripped the steering wheel tightly. Part of me still hoped I was wrong, that there was some innocent explanation waiting for me. But deep down, I knew something was terribly wrong. 10 minutes later, I pulled into the hotel parking lot. The building stood quietly under the streetlights. Cars were scattered across the lot. People moved in and out of the entrance. Everything looked completely ordinary, but my heart felt like it was about to explode. I looked at my phone again. The location that was still there. Daniel's phone. Inside the hotel. I sat in the car for a long moment, trying to gather the courage to move. Then finally, I stepped out. The cold night air hit my face. Slowly, I walked toward the entrance. Each step felt heavier than the last. Inside the lobby, everything looked calm. Soft lighting. A quiet reception desk. People walking through the hallways. I looked down at the location again. The dot moved slightly. Still inside. Still close. My pulse raced as I followed the map toward the elevators. The doors opened with a soft sound. I stepped inside. The ride to the 4th floor felt endless. When the doors opened again, my heart was pounding so loudly I could hear it in my ears. The hallway was quiet, carpeted, almost empty. I looked down at the map again. The location was only a few doors away. Room 417. My legs felt weak as I walked toward it. With every step, the truth felt closer. More real. More unavoidable. When I reached the door, I stopped. The room was silent.
No voices.
No movement. My hand slowly lifted toward the door. And just as I was about to knock, the door suddenly opened from the inside. The door opened slowly. For a split second, I thought my heart had stopped. Daniel stood in the doorway. He looked just as shocked to see me as I felt seeing him. "Julia," he said. His voice sounded confused, almost nervous. Behind him, the hotel room was dimly lit. My eyes instinctively moved past him, trying to see inside, trying to see if someone else was there. Daniel followed my gaze immediately. His expression changed. "What are you doing here?" he asked. I didn't answer. Instead, I held up my phone. The screen still showed his location. Room 417. "You told me you were in Boston," I said quietly. For a moment he didn't speak. Then he rubbed the back of his neck, a nervous habit I had seen many times before. "Julia, I can explain." That sentence felt like a punch to the chest. Explain. The word people use when they've been caught. I stepped past him and walked into the room. Daniel didn't stop me. The room was small.
A bed. A chair.
A suitcase on the floor. But there was no one else there. No woman. No second person. Just Daniel. For a moment, confusion replaced the anger inside me. "Where is she?" I asked. Daniel frowned. "Who?" "The woman from the restaurant," I said. He stared at me. Then his shoulders dropped slightly. "You followed me here?" "I saw the photo," I replied. "And your location." Daniel sighed and sat down on the edge of the bed. For the first time that evening, he looked exhausted. Not guilty. Just tired. "I didn't go to Boston," he said quietly. "I know that." Another silence filled the room. Then he looked up at me. "I lied because I didn't want you to know about this place." I frowned. "What do you mean?" Daniel gestured around the room. "This hotel. I've been coming here for the last few weeks." My stomach tightened again. "Why?" He hesitated, then finally answered. "Because I lost my job." The words hung in the air. I blinked. "What?" Daniel looked down at his hands.
3 weeks ago," he said.
"My company laid off half the department." I felt my mind struggling to process the information. "You lost your job?" He nodded slowly. "I didn't know how to tell you." The anger inside me wavered slightly. "Daniel, you could have just told me." "I know," he said, "but I felt like a failure." He looked around the room again. "I've been coming here every day pretending to go to work. My chest tightened. So, what about the restaurant? Daniel gave a small, tired smile. That was actually a meeting. With someone from another company. An interview. The memory of the photo flashed through my mind. And the woman? I asked. Daniel looked genuinely confused again. What woman? The one sitting with you. Realization slowly crossed his face. Oh, he shook his head. That was the hiring manager. My shoulders dropped slightly. All the tension that had built up inside me suddenly felt heavier. You thought I was cheating? He asked quietly. I didn't answer, but my silence was enough. Daniel sighed. I should have told you the truth, he said. I was just ashamed. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The entire situation suddenly felt different. Less dramatic, but somehow more painful. You lied to me, I said finally. I know, and you're going to keep lying. I didn't know how to stop. I sat down in the chair across from him. The room was quiet again. Then Daniel said something softly. I actually got the job today. I looked up.
What?
He nodded. The interview went well. A strange mixture of emotions passed through me. Relief, frustration, confusion. So all of this, all the lies, were because you didn't want to tell me you lost your job? Daniel nodded again. I thought you'd be disappointed in me. I let out a quiet breath.
Daniel, I said.
I married you.
Not your job.
For the first time that night, a small smile appeared on his face. I guess I made a bigger mess of things than necessary. I stood up slowly. Yes, I said. You definitely did. He looked at me carefully. Are you still mad? I crossed my arms slightly. Yes. He nodded. That's fair. Then I sighed. But next time, I said, just tell me the truth. Daniel stood up and walked toward me. I will, he said quietly. And in that moment, I realized something important. Sometimes the truth isn't as dramatic as we imagine, but the damage caused by lies is very real.